Wokingham Today is hosting a series of leader interviews ahead of the local elections on Thursday, May the 5th. The leaders will begin with an opening statement and then answer questions on 5 topics. At the end, they will be invited to make a direct address to you, the voter. Wokingham Today has also prepared ward pages on its website, giving you the chance to meet the candidates standing in each ward. Today, I am joined by leader of the Wokingham Liberal Democrats, Clive Jones.
My name is Clive Jones, and I am the leader of the Lib Dem group on Wokingham Borough Council. We're a group of 18 councillors with a lot of experience amongst us, experience of being councillors and of running organisations, and we're looking forward to the local elections. The Liberal Democrats believe that it's important to hold local elections every year so that the council's politicians can be held to account. We are here to serve the residents of Wokingham Borough. We're here to listen to you, and the Liberal Democrats will conduct proper consultation with the residents. Local politics should be of interest to everyone. Your council looks after many aspects of your everyday life: rubbish collection, road repairs, leisure, aspects of school and health. And it's important for you to vote to get the council that you want. And of course, I want you to vote Liberal Democrat.
The first one we will cover is development in the area. Now, it's a very contentious topic. A lot of residents have really strong opinions on it, and so do a lot of local councillors as well. How do the Liberal Democrats try to appease resident concerns about overdevelopment, but also still maintain the government target of 768 homes per year?
Well, we're going to continue to oppose the government target numbers, as you said, of 768 homes a year. We really believe that enough is enough. We have built something like 40,000 houses in the borough in the last 40 years. And the Conservative government, if they got their way, would have us building another 16,000 over the next 20 years. They build 4,500 at Hall Farm, which has the River Loddon running through it. So it really just isn't a suitable site for so many houses. So we would work with the Environment Agency to show that flooding is a real serious issue in many parts of the borough. I really don't think that when we did the last local plan consultation, we were taking flooding very seriously at all. I and some of my colleagues delivered a petition to Michael Gove asking him to reduce the Conservatives' numbers for Wokingham. If they were reduced by half, there wouldn't be any need for the development at Hall Farm. There wouldn't be any need for the development at Brook's Nest or at Winnish Farm, or probably other sites as well. What we have to do, and residents are insisting that we do this, is protect green space. That's why we've had Liberal Democrat campaigns to not have any development at Swallows Meadow and at Laurel Park, both in Early, and we've also supported residents who are opposed to Hall Farm, Rook's Nest, Pinewood, and other places as well. Some local Conservatives will claim that they are against what is in the local plan. They don't want some of the development that has been put forward by their leadership. So they seem to be pretty split about what they're going to do with a local plan. And that is not really a proper way to be organising a local plan update. What we do need is lots of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses and bungalows. And we also need to build more council houses and provide more affordable homes. But the real key thing is that we have to reduce housing numbers forced on us by the Conservatives.
Okay, thank you. You touched on it there with regards to affordable housing, and all three parties have said that more affordable housing is needed in Wokingham. How can you encourage a developer to build more affordable homes? It's easy for them to, I believe the average house price in Wokingham is around £415,000, which a lot of people would say is not affordable, especially if you're trying to get on the ladder. How can you encourage a developer to buck the trend and build more of those social houses, affordable homes, or various buying schemes? What can be done to get them to actively do that?
Well, the social housing we can build ourselves, and we have the land, and I'm sure that we could build more than we are. I think we're building something like 300 social houses a year. It might be slightly more than that, but we should be doing a lot more than that. As far as affordable homes are concerned, developers, when they agree a planning application, will say that they are going to do 30% affordable homes, they're going to do 40% affordable homes. And then when they start building, they come up with all sorts of excuses as to why they can't do that. And the council then allow them to not put in so many affordable homes. And I don't think that we should be doing that. We should also be working with a housing association, so there is a lot more shared ownership. I think that is something that would really work very well in Wokingham.
Okay, not a problem at all. Okay, so something that ties in along the same lines as development with regards to infrastructure needed for that development. Schools is quite a topic at the forefront of everyone's mind. We're going into September. Wokingham Borough Council has admitted that despite increase in secondary school places at the likes of Pigott, Embrook, St Crispin's, and a proposed increase at Bowhunt, there's still a shortfall of secondary school places within the borough. What would the Lib Dem Council do to change that, to encourage schools to either take on more pupils or to change their admission boundaries so that people within the borough can get those vital school places that they want to have?
Yeah, I don't remember these problems happening for quite some time, until the last couple of years. We had a problem last year, and we managed to provide a few extra places at the last minute, and then exactly the same thing happens again. So children are being, some children are being sent to schools in Reading. Now, that shouldn't really be happening. So we need to work with the schools so that they have more places, so they have more teachers, so they can offer more classes. That's a discussion for the council and for the Department of Education, and for so many governing bodies, because the council, because a lot of the schools are academies, we don't actually have control over those schools.
Okay, you mentioned about the academies. Is it about changing policy so that they have become a bit more in control, or is it about opening up those communication channels to try and encourage them to do more to benefit Wokingham residents?
I think we need to be opening up the communication channels. I think there has been some improvement because we've had a very good children's services director in Wokingham over the last few years. So there has been an improvement in the relationship with the schools, but unfortunately she has moved on. We have another director, and hopefully she will continue to improve the relationship with our local schools.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to change the subject slightly to something that impacts all residents, all councillors, businesses across Wokingham Borough, and it's the cost of living crisis that's come on to us. I think a lot of people accept that local council do have their hands tied with regards to things that are outside of their control. So rising fuel prices, the war in Ukraine, the impacts of the pandemic. But there are things that a council can do to alleviate some of that pressure on residents. So what would a Lib Dem council do to help residents in a time when a lot of people are struggling so much?
You're absolutely right. There is a cost of living crisis, which has come about under this Conservative government, and we're actually experiencing the biggest reduction in living standards for over 40 years. And that can't really be just put down to COVID, not when food bills are going up 20%, cost of gas and electric is doubling, and people are having to decide whether they heat their homes or feed their children. National insurance is up. Boris promised no tax increase at the general election in 2019, but we have got an increase in national insurance this month, and it is a massive broken promise by the Conservatives. The value of pensions dropped. Pensions have only gone up by 3.1% when inflation is actually 7%. The Liberal Democrats, when they were in coalition, put in place something called the triple lock, which increased pensions properly, and that's been happening since 2013. The Conservatives scrapped it this year. So if you're on the state pension, they've really hit you. 15% of children in Wokingham Borough are living in poverty. Yet all we hear from the Conservatives is this is a great place to live. But what about those 15% of our children? That's nearly 1 in 6 children in Wokingham living in poverty, having to use food banks. Now, tackling poverty is mainly a role for the national government, but there is some things that we can do locally. We can increase the amount of affordable and social housing that is built in Wokingham. We can deliver a programme to support state schools and governing bodies to keep the essential school costs affordable for all parents. We need an affordable school uniform policy for all schools, and pressure must be put on schools to make them do that. We can ensure that we have an effective emergency out-of-hours support service for residents in crisis that will ensure that no resident is forced to sleep rough, and we can ensure that residents have the support that they need to be able to claim benefits which they're entitled to. And if the council must maintain its strong relationship that's been built over the last couple of years with the local CAB and other voluntary organisations. And if the Liberal Democrats were in power, we really would push ahead with a very ambitious cross-party initiative to do everything that we could fight, everything that we could do to fight poverty within the borough.
Okay, thank you. And at the moment, the council is consulting on its draft anti-poverty strategy. I believe £500,000 of funding has been put into further research to it. With the cost of living crisis deepening, inflation rising, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon, do you think that needs to be looked at again to make it more robust moving forward?
Yeah. I don't think that that we are really ambitious enough to be looking at how we tackle poverty. As I just said, nearly 1 in 6 children are living in poverty in Wokingham Borough, which is supposed to be one of the best places in the country to live, one of the most affluent, and yet we have 1 in 6 of our children living in poverty. We really do have to do something about it.
Okay, and I know you mentioned that it needs to be a bit more ambitious. What sort of things would you like to see added or changed to impact poverty?
I think what we've really got to do is talk to all of the different agencies that are engaged with people. CAB, Salvation Army, food banks, all of the different agencies, and understand where the real problems are and understand what we as a council can do to alleviate those problems. And unless we are having those very serious conversations at a high level within the council, then nothing will happen over the next few years.
Okay, thank you. And another thing that's been mentioned with regards to campaigning for this local election, the Conservatives have said that they believe the council tax reduction scheme is important and good at helping to alleviate some of the pressure. What are your thoughts on the scheme?
I think the scheme is well run by the council, but there's not enough money put into it. We actually think we should be putting more money behind it, and I'm pretty sure that we said that when this was debated at the council a few weeks ago.
Okay, so is it something that you would keep in place and fund more, or would you remove it?
Yeah, we would definitely keep it in place, and we would find more funding for it.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Moving on now slightly to another topic that's at the forefront of residents' minds with antisocial behaviour. Thames Valley Police have acknowledged that there has been a rise in incidents, both centrally in Wokingham town and across the borough in general. A perfect example of this would be the car meets that happened towards the start of this year. What can be done by the council in collaboration with the police to try and reduce those numbers of incidents?
Well, we do have a real problem, because in the Thames Valley, the police have had their budget cut by £100 million. So 25% of their budget was cut a few years ago. So that means that there are less police on the streets, there are less police dealing with crime. That leads to more anxiety and fear from residents. And part of those cuts that the police have had to make, because they've had their government grant cut by £100 million, is that they have closed police stations. And I think there's something like 214 police stations across the country have closed since 2015, and 67 of those are in the Thames Valley, which is a huge number of police stations closing. So this lack of presence in Wokingham, because Wokingham police station was closed a few years ago, has got to have some sort of effect on antisocial behaviour. And the council have not been good at dealing with antisocial behaviour. Several years ago, they joined with West Berkshire and formed a service that was supposed to save money and at the same time improve the council's response to antisocial behaviour. It didn't work. It was not a very good service at all. So hastily, about a year ago, they decided to bring it back in-house, and the council are now looking after its own antisocial behaviour. And hopefully more resources are going to be put into this over the next few years. But we savagely cut in Wokingham, or the Conservatives savagely cut youth services about a year ago, about 8 years ago. We do need to restore those services. We need more people working in the community, so that where families and individuals are having problems, they can be supported by the council. So a good start for tackling antisocial behaviour and a good start for tackling these car meets is to listen to the residents. There has been a problem, as you mentioned, with car meets in different parts of the borough, and the council and the police were very, very slow to react, to try and stop those car meets. We had gangs that were meeting in town centre car parks, racing around until the early hours of the morning. Car meets like that are not useful hijinks. They are a blight on people's lives. They leave residents, especially children, very scared and very anxious, and it leads to a lot of threatening behaviour. Now, our antisocial behaviour officers are now much more engaged. The local police are now much more engaged, and we welcome their efforts to try and stop these car meets. But what needs to happen is, in future, we need to act more quickly. We need to listen to residents and take their concerns very seriously. And we need to make sure that we take early action so that problems don't spiral out of control.
Okay, thank you. And I know recently spoken about at council, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago, was plans to introduce a public service protection order, and that would increase powers to sort of deliver on the spot fines of up to £1,000. Is it as easy as just handing out a fine to someone who's parked their car with a group of friends, or is it more about, like you touched on, speaking with residents both against the car meets and for the car meets to try and find a happy medium? I think a lot of people can accept that racing around town centres is antisocial and, you know, spinning your car around a roundabout, but the idea of a group of friends parked up somewhere just to look at their cars is quite inoffensive. So is it more about speaking with both sides of the argument and trying to find a happy medium rather than here's a fine and just kind of go away?
Yeah, I think there is something in what you say there. If somebody is just meeting up and they're looking at each other's cars, they are admiring the additions or the deletions that they have made to their car, that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if they are racing around, if they are causing a nuisance, if they are going up and down the different ramps and floors of a car park at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, that's just not acceptable. And we should not be standing by and allowing that to happen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the final topic that I want to cover is council and governance. It's a fairly broad subject, but coming up to the local elections on the 5th of May, there is the opportunity for the Lib Dem to take a controlling amount of the council. So how would you change things with regards to how decisions are made and engaging with the community? What would be your first port of call if you were elected into control?
I think the first thing to say, Dan, is that council meetings under the Conservatives really have become quite a farce. Just about every meeting, the Conservatives refuse to have an extension. They will spend half an hour, 40 minutes giving speeches, telling everybody how wonderful they are as a council, but they won't get to motions, which are always at the end of an agenda. And sometimes a motion that a councillor has put forward doesn't get debated for over a year. There was a motion that was a commitment to the council to plant 250,000 trees. Didn't get discussed for nearly a year. We've got a motion now that is outstanding, which is reviewing support. It's to discuss reviewing support for families facing financial crisis. And these things should be debated at the council, but the Conservatives don't want to. They don't want to go on beyond 10:30. They want to get off to the pub as soon as they can. And that's exactly what they do. The meeting finishes at 10:30 and they all troop over to the pub as quickly as they can, when they should be really representing residents in the council chamber discussing issues that affect residents of Wokingham, but they don't want to do that. The council leader recently has stopped asking questions. Councillors and members of the public are allowed to ask questions at each full council meeting. The council leader is now answering questions with questions to the people who are asking him questions. He's taking no notice of the questions that they are asking, and that is just not rude. That is just not right. He's being rude to residents and then not offering any apologies to them. The real problem is that the Conservatives see Boris Johnson being evasive and not answering legitimate questions, and they think that they can get away with it. They think that they can do the same. Now, overview and scrutiny, and there are 4 overview and scrutiny committees at the council, can be made much more effective. At the moment, they're totally dominated by the ruling Conservative group, and the Conservative councillors will spend most of their time congratulating each other on things that they might have done. The only effective scrutiny comes from opposition councillors, from ourselves, so there's 18 Liberal Democrats, from the 2 Labour councillors, and from the 3 independent councillors. That's where the only effective scrutiny is. What we would do if we were in control would be to have an opposition councillor as the chair of those overview and scrutiny committees. There's also been a really, I think, quite alarming development in that debate is being completely stifled in the council, so that if nobody is going to vote against an item that is on the agenda, you only hear from the proposer of the item. You don't hear from anybody else. So opposition councillors don't get the opportunity to speak. Now, how can that be democratic? It isn't. It's not democratic at all. Now, we're having a boundary review at the moment, and the reason for the boundary review is that with all the development that has been going on in Wokingham, 3 or 4 of the wards are just far too big now. They've got too many people living in them. So we have to have a boundary review. So the first thing we have to decide is whether we want to continue having elections every year, which is what we do at the moment, and then we have 1 year without elections when the rest of the country are having county council elections, or whether we just want to have elections every 4 years. And surprise, surprise, the Conservatives want them every 4 years because they don't want the electorate to be able to pass any judgment on them except every 4 years. They see it as a political advantage that they only have elections every 4 years. And I just can't see that is right. You have to have elections every year so that residents have the opportunity to tell the local council that they're not happy with something that the council is doing. A couple of examples of what's happened recently. There was going to be a one-way system in Woodley along Woodlands Avenue. The Conservative leadership on the Borough Council proposed that this road was made one way. Local residents didn't want it. They fought against it, and the council changed its mind. If there weren't elections this year, the council wouldn't have changed its mind. It would have gone ahead with that one-way system, which was not the right thing for Woodley. So if we were in control, we would certainly change many aspects of the way that the council is run. It would be much more democratic, but we can only do that if residents vote for Liberal Democrat councillors on the 5th of May.
Thank you. And the second half of the council and governance question is more to do with the sort of budgeting of it. I think all three parties have ideas about what they want to change and what they want to do, but there is still a cost of living crisis which impacts the council as well as residents. And there has been examples of a nearby council that has struggled financially with balancing the books. How can you deliver for residents and still maintain that sort of careful nature with regards to council funds? It's a very fine balancing act. What do you plan on doing with regards to balancing the two?
It is a very difficult situation for us, because, as you say, that there is a cost of living crisis, with cost of food going up, with the cost of fuel and heating and energy, everything going up considerably. So we have to do as much as we can to make sure that council tax does not go up in a big way. And it is going to be very hard over the next few years, because the costs for the council are going up. The building costs, raw materials, all of those costs are going up. National insurance is going up. And one of the big problems that this council could be facing in the next few years is if the Conservatives push forward their ideas for adult social care, because the council's finance director has estimated that the government's policies for adult social care could actually cost Wokingham Borough Council £28 million. Now, £28 million in 1 year, then £28 million the next, probably £29 million a year after that, would absolutely bankrupt the council. So that would be no good for anybody whatsoever. So we really do have some big financial issues coming down the line. And I think that the Liberal Democrats would do a very, very, very good job in keeping the finances of the Borough Council on track, keeping reserves at a reasonable level, and not making things difficult for residents by reducing services. The council officers have done pretty well over the past few years, not cutting services, and that's something that we would want to continue with.
Okay, so we've covered all of the topics. I guess the final thing is residents will go to the polling station on Thursday, May the 5th. What would be your message to residents ahead of that? They will go there, they'll have their ballot, and they will have a few choices on it. Why should residents vote for Liberal Democrat in their local elections next week?
I've got a very simple message for residents, and that is that only a vote for a Liberal Democrat can actually replace this Conservative administration. There are currently 18 Lib Dem councillors. There are 3 independent councillors, and there are 2 Labour councillors. And if residents are fed up with the Conservatives, and many of them are telling us that they are fed up with the Conservatives, then they need to vote for a Liberal Democrat councillor. The Liberal Democrats are here to serve the residents. We're here to listen to the residents, and we're here to share the concerns of residents. There has to be a reduction in housing numbers. Borough Council has allowed 40,000 houses to be built in the last 40 years. Enough really is enough. We don't want any more building on Greenbelt. We want to protect our green spaces. We need to build 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes and bungalows, and we need less 4 and 5 bedroom properties. Liberal Democrats will put tackling climate change at the heart of what the council does. We need a reduction in emissions locally. We'll encourage greater use of public transport, more walking, more safe cycling routes, more active travel. We'll bring all of the interested parties who want to tackle the climate emergency together. We'll transform the way that we deal with children's mental health in the borough. Currently, many assessments take 2 years if a child is showing some signs of a mental health issue. Their assessment could be as long as 2 years. And that's before there's any treatment. 2 years out of the life of an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 12-year-old is a huge amount of time. That 2 years have a huge effect on that child's family. Could also have a huge effect on many of their classmates. But for £230,000, the waiting time for assessments could be reduced to just 6 weeks. So if anybody needs one reason to vote Liberal Democrat, that's your reason, that we would reduce the waiting times for CAMS assessment from 2 years to 6 weeks. We'll engage with local businesses, including retail, to promote an economic recovery after this COVID pandemic. We'll build more social housing. We'll plant 300,000 trees in the borough, increasing canopy cover, and we'll develop a comprehensive strategy to reduce harmful air air pollutions. Residents will be at the heart of all of our actions. We'll listen to residents, we'll deliver council services efficiently and effectively. We'll conduct proper consultations with residents. We'll be inclusive, and equalities and climate emergency will be at the centre of all of our policies. Liberal Democrats have a skilled and experienced team of councillors and candidates. We are ready and willing to take on the responsibility of office. We want to serve you and our communities, and we want to make Wokingham Borough an even better place to live and to work in.